Be Me, 34, employment discrimination attorney specializing in workplace harassment cases. Built entire career around representing women in corporate litigation against major companies. Had won multiple high-profile cases for sexual harassment, gender discrimination, hostile work environment. Was known in legal circles as aggressive feminist lawyer who didn't back down and made companies pay. Posted regularly on social media about my cases, about fighting patriarchy, about holding men accountable, about making them pay for their actions, their behavior, their privilege in workplace. Had 200K followers on LinkedIn and another 150K on Twitter where women loved my content. They'd comment saying you're doing the work. Thank you for fighting. We need more lawyers like you. My win rate was impressive with 87% of cases settling usually for significant amounts, 6 figures often, sometimes 7. Companies preferred to settle rather than risk public trial, bad publicity, discovery process. Started taking on more and more cases. Any woman who came to me with complaint about man at workplace, I'd take the case. My standard was simple. If she felt uncomfortable, if she felt harassed, if she felt discriminated against, that was enough. Her feelings mattered. Her experience mattered. Her discomfort mattered more than anything else. Didn't need much evidence because her testimony was evidence. Her feelings were valid. Believe women always. Age 35. Got new client named Jennifer who was 27 years old, marketing coordinator at tech startup. She came to me upset about her male coworker named David who she'd worked with for about a year. She said he made her uncomfortable, had asked her out twice, and she'd said no both times. He'd also asked if they could grab coffee as colleagues, and she'd felt pressured by this. Also said he'd complimented her appearance. Told her she looked nice few times over the year, and she'd felt objectified. Also mentioned he'd touched her shoulder once when walking by her desk, and she'd felt violated by this contact. I took the case immediately because this was clear harassment, clear hostile environment, clear gender discrimination. We filed lawsuit against David personally and against the company for $500,000. For emotional distress, for hostile work environment, for sexual harassment, for gender discrimination. Company tried to settle immediately offering $50,000, but I refused because this wasn't enough. Not for what Jennifer had suffered, not for her trauma, not for her pain from this harassment. We were going to trial. I was going to make David pay, make him an example of what happens. Show that women's discomfort had consequences, real consequences, expensive consequences for men. Discovery process began and company turned over emails, text messages, video footage, personnel records, everything. Started going through evidence with Jennifer to build our case for trial. Found David's emails, and he'd sent Jennifer one email asking if she wanted to grab coffee sometime. Professional tone, nothing inappropriate in the language, just asking about coffee. Second email responding to her no, said no problem. Let me know if you change your mind. That was it. No other communication about dating at all in entire year they'd worked together. Found the compliments he'd given her. He told her you look nice today, 3 times over 12 months. In context of company-wide meetings where everyone was dressed professionally for presentations. Found video footage of the shoulder touch. He was walking past her desk in crowded office. Said excuse me, briefly touched shoulder to get by, lasted half a second at most. This was the evidence of harassment, of hostile environment, of discrimination we were bringing to trial. Started feeling slightly uncomfortable about strength of case, but pushed it down because Jennifer felt harassed. Her feelings mattered, and that was enough evidence in my mind at the time. Company's lawyer named Robert Chun was very experienced, very sharp, came prepared for depositions. Jennifer's deposition was first, and Robert asked her to describe the harassment she experienced. She described feeling uncomfortable when David asked her out, and Robert asked how he asked. Did he corner you? No. Did he ask repeatedly in same conversation? No. Did he ask while you were alone? No. In the office? Did he threaten anything? No. Did he offer anything for saying yes? No. After you said no, did he ask again? Well, yes, few months later. Did he ask the same day? No. 3 months later. Did he pressure you to change your mind? Well, he said let me know if I change my mind. Is that pressure? It felt like pressure to me. Robert moved on to the compliments, asking you said he objectified you by commenting on your appearance. What did he say? He said I looked nice, In what context? At meetings. Was he the only one commenting on appearance? No, others did too. Did women comment on men's appearance? Yes, sometimes. Did you ever compliment male coworkers' appearance? Maybe once or twice. Did they sue you for harassment? No. How many times did David compliment you over 12 months? 3 times. 3 times in 12 months at professional meetings. Is that harassment? It made me uncomfortable. Robert moved to the shoulder touch. You said he violated you by touching shoulder. Did you see the video? Yes. Was he trying to get past you? Yes. Did he say excuse me? Yes. Did the touch last more than a second? No. Did he touch you anywhere else ever? No. Has anyone else ever touched your shoulder while passing by? Yes. Did you sue them? No. Why is David's touch different? Because I felt uncomfortable with him specifically. Deposition was not going well at all, but I coached Jennifer to stick to her feelings. Your discomfort matters. That's what counts. That's the evidence we need for trial. David's deposition was next, and he came in nervous but prepared with his own attorney. Robert asked him to describe relationship with Jennifer, and he said they were cordial co-workers. He'd asked her out once for coffee. She'd said no. He'd accepted that completely. Few months later, he'd casually mentioned if she ever wanted to grab coffee, she could let him know. She'd declined again, and he never asked again after that. Never brought it up. I started my questions asking, why did you ask Jennifer out twice after she said no? He said I asked once, then months later casually mentioned again, thinking maybe timing was issue. After second no, I never brought it up again. Respected her decision completely. I asked, you told her to let you know if she changed her mind. That's pressure on her. He said I was just being polite, leaving door open if she wanted, wasn't pressuring anyone. I asked, you complimented her appearance multiple times over the year. He said I said she looked nice at few meetings. Said same to other coworkers, both men and women. Was just being friendly and professional. I asked, you touched her without permission. He said I said excuse me while passing by. Briefly touched shoulder to get through crowded space. Lasted half second. Didn't mean anything. I asked, you created hostile work environment for her. He said I didn't mean to make anyone uncomfortable. I was trying to be professional colleague, maybe friendly, never meant harm to anyone. After depositions, Robert made offer. Company would pay $10,000 nuisance settlement. David would pay nothing. No admission of wrongdoing from anyone. Take it or leave it. I was insulted by this offer and told Jennifer we're going to trial. We're going to win. We're going to make David pay for what he did, for her suffering from his behavior. Trial preparation began and went through evidence again and again and again looking for strength. The more I looked, the less I saw real harassment, real discrimination, real hostile environment. But Jennifer felt harassed, and that had to be enough in my belief system at the time. Trial began, selected jury, made opening statement describing Jennifer's suffering. Her trauma, her pain from David's behavior, his repeated advances, his objectification, his violation. Jury looked sympathetic during my opening, which gave me confidence we could win. Robert's opening was different. He said this case was about normal workplace interaction being labeled harassment, about polite colleague being sued for being friendly, about woman's regret becoming man's liability. Called Jennifer to stand, and she testified emotionally about feeling uncomfortable, feeling unsafe, feeling harassed, about her suffering from David's behavior over the year they worked together. Cross-examination was brutal as Robert asked specific questions with specific answers. How many days of work did you miss due to this harassment? None, actually. Did you report David to HR? No, I didn't. Did you tell him his behavior made you uncomfortable? No, I didn't. Did you avoid him at work? Not really, we still work together. Did you continue working on projects together? Yes. Did your work performance suffer from this harassment? No, it didn't. Did you seek therapy for trauma? No. Did you see doctor for emotional distress? No. When did you decide this was harassment? After I talked to some friends about 6 months after the incidents. They said it was harassment. So 6 months later, you decided normal workplace interactions were harassment based on friends' opinions. Objection, sustained, but damage was done to our case in front of jury. Called David to stand, and he testified calmly about being friendly coworker, trying to be professional, about asking out once, then casually again months later, about giving occasional professional compliments, about accidentally touching shoulder while passing in crowded office, about never meaning to make anyone uncomfortable, about being confused why this was lawsuit when he'd done nothing wrong in his mind. My cross-examination tried to paint him as predator, as harasser, as someone who should have known better. But he stayed calm, answered every question honestly and directly without getting defensive. Jury looked increasingly sympathetic to him as trial went on, which worried me deeply. Robert called expert witness, workplace behavior specialist, who testified that David's actions were within normal range, that asking colleague out twice over a year was not harassment, that occasional compliments at meetings was not objectification, that brief shoulder touch while passing was not violation of any workplace standard. I called my expert, trauma specialist, who testified about impact of harassment on victims. But on cross-examination, Robert asked, can someone feel harassed by normal behavior? Expert said, yes, feelings are valid. Robert asked, can feeling uncomfortable make normal behavior into harassment? Expert said, if pattern of behavior creates hostile environment. Robert asked, is asking someone out twice in 12 months a pattern? Expert said, could be. Robert asked, is saying someone looks nice 3 times in year a pattern? Expert said, could be. Robert asked, is touching someone's shoulder once while saying excuse me a pattern? Expert had to admit, well, no, that's not a pattern of behavior. Closing arguments came, and I gave passionate speech about believing women, about taking discomfort seriously, about holding men accountable for their behavior, about making them pay for making women uncomfortable. Robert's closing was devastating to our case. He said this case was about weaponizing normal social interaction, about punishing politeness, about making men terrified to interact with women at all, about destroying man's reputation over nothing, over normal friendly behavior. He said if jury found for Jennifer, they'd be saying men can't ask women out, can't give compliments, can't accidentally touch while passing by, can't be human without risking lawsuit and career destruction. Jury deliberated for 3 hours and came back with verdict that shocked me completely. Found for David on all counts. No harassment, no hostile environment, no discrimination. Jennifer owed nothing, which I expected, but then judge spoke, saying, I'm not done yet. What do you mean? I asked, confused. Judge said Mr. David has filed counterclaim. For defamation, for emotional distress, for damage to reputation, for legal fees. This was unexpected. I hadn't taken his counterclaim seriously during trial preparation. Judge continued, saying Mr. David's reputation has been significantly damaged by these baseless accusations. He's been labeled sexual harasser for normal behavior. He's suffered real harm. Lost job opportunities, lost relationships, suffered emotional distress from false accusations against him. Judge looked directly at me and said, Counselor, you brought frivolous lawsuit against innocent man, based on nothing but client's feelings about normal behavior. This has serious consequences. Judge ruled David was owed $150,000 compensation for defamation, for emotional distress, for reputational damage, plus legal fees of another $75,000, making total of $225,000. Jennifer owed nothing, but I personally, as her attorney, was responsible for full amount, for bringing frivolous case against innocent person without proper evidence or merit. Sat there completely stunned. This had never happened in my entire career as attorney. Not only did we lose, but I owed David massive amount for suing him in first place. Court was dismissed, and I sat in shock, unable to process what had just happened to me. Jennifer looked at me asking what just happened, and I said we lost, and I have to pay David $225,000 for suing him for harassment when he didn't actually do anything wrong. She said, but I felt harassed by his behavior, and I said, I know, but feelings aren't enough. Not legally, not anymore, not when behavior is objectively normal workplace interaction. Outside, courthouse media was waiting, and David gave statement that went viral immediately. He said, I'm not celebrating this victory. I'm a normal person who tried to be friendly colleague. Got sued for it, lost my job, lost relationships, spent year defending myself from lies. This case shows we've gone too far. Normal human interaction isn't harassment. Feeling uncomfortable isn't evidence of wrongdoing. We need to stop weaponizing hurt feelings against innocent people. Statement went viral with millions of views, shared everywhere. Comments were brutal toward me, toward Jennifer, toward feminist lawyers. About time. Frivolous lawsuits need consequences. Can't just sue men for being normal human beings in workplace. My professional reputation was destroyed overnight. Lost multiple clients. Other lawyers distanced themselves. Law firm asked me to leave. Social media turned against me completely. Comments saying she ruined innocent man over her feelings. This is what's wrong with modern feminism. Had to pay David $225,000, which drained my savings. Had to take loan for the rest. Financial ruin, professional ruin, personal ruin, all because I believed feelings were enough. Discomfort was evidence. Accusations were truth without needing objective proof. Started therapy to process everything that had happened, and therapist asked hard questions. Did you actually believe David harassed Jennifer? She felt harassed, I said. But did he actually do anything wrong? Therapist asked. Thought about it, really thought. He asked her out twice over 12 months. Gave few compliments. Touched shoulder once while passing. No, I admitted nothing objectively wrong with any of that behavior. Then why did you bring the lawsuit? Therapist asked. Because she felt uncomfortable. Because feelings matter. Because believe women always. Because that's what I'd built career on. Therapist said, but feelings aren't objective reality. Someone can feel uncomfortable about normal behavior. That doesn't make behavior harassment. This was hard truth I'd spent career avoiding. Started going through my old cases, all 50+ cases I'd won or settled over the years. Looking at evidence with new eyes, with objectivity I hadn't used before. Found some were legitimate with clear harassment, clear discrimination, clear hostile environment that was real. But others were like Jennifer's case. Normal interaction labeled harassment because woman felt uncomfortable. One case I'd settled for $200,000. Man had asked woman to dinner 3 times over 2 years. She'd said no each time. He'd accepted, never asked again after 3rd rejection. She sued saying she felt pressured. Company settled. Man lost his job for asking 3 times in 2 years. Now looking back, that wasn't harassment. That was normal social interaction over long period. Another case settled for $150,000. Man had complimented woman's presentation, saying she did great job. She felt patronized, sued for discrimination. Company settled. Man was demoted for complimenting work. Now looking back, that wasn't discrimination. That was encouragement and positive feedback. Started counting how many of my cases were actually legitimate versus weaponized feelings. About half were real harassment that deserved consequences. Other half were normal behavior called harassment. Because someone felt uncomfortable with normal human interaction in workplace. Had to face truth that I destroyed lives, ruined careers, damaged reputations over nothing. Over feelings, over discomfort, over misinterpretations of normal behavior as harassment. Made list of men I'd gone after for questionable cases and started reaching out to apologize. First was man named Michael. Had sued him 5 years ago for hostile environment. Because he'd asked my client out few times, complimented her, case settled, he lost job. Called him saying I need to apologize for what I did to you. Long silence on phone. He asked for what, and I said for the lawsuit. I don't think you did anything wrong. Longer silence, then he said you destroyed my life over nothing. Do you know what that did to me? I said I'm starting to understand now. He said I lost my job, lost my relationship. She couldn't handle dating accused harasser, lost friendships. People believed I was predator. Spent years rebuilding reputation and career. You're sorry doesn't give me back 5 years. Doesn't give back relationships I lost, opportunities one missed, reputation I had before. He hung up and I started crying about what I'd done to innocent person. Called another man named James, had sued him 3 years ago for discrimination. Because he'd given my client feedback on her work and she felt criticized unfairly. Case settled. He was forced out of company. Called him to apologize. He was cold, saying I know who you are. I know what you did to me. I said I was wrong. You didn't do anything worth suing over. You were just doing your job. He said tell that to my wife who left me when I was accused of discrimination. Tell that to my kids who heard classmates say their dad was bad person at school. Tell that to the career I spent 20 years building that ended overnight because of your lawsuit. Started sobbing saying I destroyed your life over nothing, and he said yes you did. And sorry doesn't fix anything at all. He hung up on me. Went through list calling each man I'd sued in questionable cases over the years. Some wouldn't answer, some hung up immediately, some listened then told me about their suffering. about lives destroyed, about reputations ruined, about relationships ended, about careers finished. All over feelings, all over discomfort, all over accusations that weren't based on actual wrongdoing. Made public post about what I'd learned, most vulnerable thing I'd ever written. Titled I Was Wrong. I destroyed innocent men and detailed the David case. How I'd sued him for normal behavior. How judge ruled I owed him money. How I'd reviewed my past cases. How many were based on nothing but feelings. How I destroyed innocent lives and was trying to make amends now. Post went viral, but not supportively at all. Feminist community attacked me viciously. Traitor, internalized misogyny, protecting predators, setting back movement decades. Men weren't sympathetic either, saying too little too late, damage is done. You destroyed lives. Now you say sorry as if that fixes anything you did. Lost all my followers, lost all my credibility, lost all my career that I'd built. Started over completely, took job at small civil firm, not handling harassment cases. Not handling discrimination, just basic civil litigation that couldn't hurt anyone. Paid off debt to David slowly over 3 years. Every payment reminder of my mistakes. Of lives I destroyed, of damage I'd done in name of believe women always. Started speaking about my experience at legal conferences about weaponizing harassment claims. About difference between real harassment and hurt feelings. About need for objective standards. Not just subjective discomfort as only evidence needed for lawsuit. Got a lot of pushback saying you're making it harder for real victims to come forward. I said no, I'm making it clearer what real harassment is versus normal interaction. That makes someone uncomfortable, validated yes, but not weaponized against innocent people. Started consulting with companies on harassment policies, teaching them difference between legitimate complaints and weaponized feelings against normal behavior. One company showed me their current policy. Any behavior that makes employee uncomfortable is potential harassment. I said this is too broad. Normal social interaction can make people uncomfortable. That doesn't make it harassment. Help them rewrite policy with objective standards. Harassment is unwanted sexual advances after clear rejection, comments of sexual nature about person's body. Repeated requests after multiple rejections, quid pro quo trading favors, creating hostile environment through persistent unwelcome behavior. Not harassment is asking someone out once or twice and accepting rejection, professional compliments about work quality. Accidental brief contact in passing, normal social interaction that someone finds uncomfortable. Started seeing results as companies implemented clearer policies, fewer frivolous complaints, more focus on actual problems. Got contacted by men's rights organization asking me to speak at their conference. Initially said no, didn't want association. They persisted saying you have unique perspective. You were on other side. Now you see truth. Please share that with men who've been falsely accused. Finally agreed and spoke at their conference, room full of men who'd been accused falsely. Of harassment, of assault, of discrimination, all had lost jobs, reputations, relationships, families. One man shared I asked coworker if she wanted to grab lunch. She said no, I never asked again. 6 months later she filed complaints saying I made her uncomfortable. I lost my job, lost my career, lost my marriage. Another man said I gave employee performance review, pointed out areas for improvement. She filed complaint for hostile environment saying I was targeting her. Company settled, I was terminated. These stories were heartbreaking and familiar. These were cases I would have taken. I would have prosecuted. I would have won against innocent men doing their jobs. Told them honestly I'm sorry for my part in creating culture where this happens. Where feelings trump facts. Where accusations equal guilt. Where men are presumed guilty until proven innocent. Started advocacy work for falsely accused, helping them navigate legal system. Helping them rebuild reputations, helping them fight back against false claims. This was redemption. This was atonement. This was trying to undo damage I'd helped create. 5 years after David case, he reached out asking to meet, which surprised me. Met at coffee shop and he looked good, healthy, successful. He'd rebuilt his life. He said, I wanted to talk to you about forgiveness. I said, I don't deserve it from you. He said, maybe not, but holding anger isn't helping me. I'm moving forward. Part of that is forgiving you for what you did to me years ago. Started crying. I destroyed your life. He said you tried to, but I rebuilt. Better than before, found better job, found better relationship, found perspective on life. He continued what you did was wrong, but you've worked to make amends. I see that. I respect that. Takes courage to admit you were wrong. This was grace I didn't deserve, but needed desperately to move forward. Current reality 7 years after that devastating case is completely different. No longer practicing harassment law, no longer believing feelings equal facts. No longer assuming accusations equal guilt without objective evidence. Instead, I help falsely accused, help companies create fair policies, help train lawyers on difference between real harassment and weaponized feelings. Paid off debt to David 3 years ago, lost my career as feminist lawyer, but found purpose in truth, in fairness, in justice for everyone, not just women. Final reflection 7 years later, I was wrong about so much for so long. Feelings aren't facts. Discomfort isn't evidence. Accusations aren't convictions. Women can be wrong. Men can be innocent. Normal interaction isn't harassment. Hurt feelings aren't legal claims that should destroy someone's life and career. Real harassment exists. Real discrimination exists. Real hostile environments exist. But we need objective standards, clear definitions, actual evidence. Not just feelings, not just discomfort, not just accusations without proof. That's what I learned after suing innocent man, judge awarding him compensation from me. Losing everything, having to rebuild, having to face what I'd done. To innocent people over feelings, over ideology, over belief that accusations were always true. That women were always right, that men were always wrong. All of which were false, all of which destroyed lives, all of which I'm still trying to repair. That's my story, that's my lesson, that's everything I learned the hard way. 7 years after that devastating case, started teaching at law school about ethics in harassment litigation. Invited by Dean who'd followed my story and wanted students to learn from my mistakes. First lecture had 200 students and I started by telling them about David case completely honestly. How I'd sued innocent man for normal workplace behavior. How I'd lost and owed him compensation. How I'd reviewed my entire career and found I destroyed multiple innocent lives over feelings. Students were shocked, some angry, some thoughtful. One student asked, how could you not see what you were doing? I explained I was so committed to believe women always that I stopped evaluating evidence objectively. Started seeing every male behavior through lens of potential harassment regardless of actual behavior. Treated feelings as facts, discomfort as proof, accusations as convictions without proper investigation. Another student asked, what would you do differently now with same cases? I said I would investigate properly, evaluate evidence objectively, distinguish between real harassment and normal behavior. Would require objective evidence, not just subjective feelings before destroying someone's career and reputation. Would remember that accusations aren't convictions, that feelings aren't facts, that discomfort isn't proof. Started getting contacted by other lawyers who'd gone through similar experiences. One lawyer named Sarah said she'd lost major case where she sued man for asking client out repeatedly. Turns out he'd asked twice in 18 months and accepted rejection both times. Judge ruled against her, and she had to pay legal fees. Woke her up to what she'd been doing. Another lawyer, named Michelle, said she specialized in hostile environment cases for years. Won dozens of cases, but started questioning when one man she sued committed suicide before trial. His note said he couldn't live with being called predator when he'd done nothing wrong. That devastated her and made her review every case. Found many were questionable at best. Started movement among lawyers called Objective Justice, where we advocated for evidence-based approach to harassment claims rather than feelings-based approach that had destroyed so many lives. Got tremendous resistance from feminist legal organizations who said we were betraying victims. But we argued we were protecting real victims by stopping frivolous claims that made real claims less believable. One conference I spoke at had panel of men who'd been falsely accused and successfully fought back. One man named Robert said company tried to fire him for harassment. He'd complimented co-workers' presentation. He fought it. One, company had to pay him damages and public apology for wrongful termination. Another man named Daniel said woman sued him for hostile environment. He'd asked her to lunch once. He countersued for defamation. 1. She had to pay him $100,000 for false accusations. These cases showed tide was turning. Men were fighting back against false accusations. Courts were starting to recognize difference between real harassment and weaponized feelings. Companies were implementing better policies with objective standards rather than subjective complaints. My work with David's case had inadvertently started movement toward a more balanced approach. Recently, David and I were invited to speak together at legal conference about the case. We told story from both perspectives, how I'd sued him for normal behavior, how he'd lost everything, how judge ruled in his favor and awarded him compensation from me, how we'd both learned from experience. Audience was split between those who thought I'd been right to believe Jennifer regardless of evidence, and those who thought I'd been wrong to sue without objective proof of harassment. During Q&A, a young lawyer asked David how he felt about me, now 7 years later. He said I've forgiven her because she's genuinely worked to make amends and change the system. She's helped dozens of falsely accused men. She's taught hundreds of lawyers to evaluate evidence properly. She's working to undo the damage she caused, and that takes real courage to admit you were wrong. Young lawyer asked me what I'd say to Jennifer now if I could talk to her again. I said I'd tell her I'm sorry for encouraging her to weaponize her discomfort against innocent person. That feelings matter, but they're not evidence. That discomfort is valid, but it's not proof. That David didn't deserve what we put him through, that I failed her by not being objective. Final case I worked on before retiring from practice completely was helping young man falsely accused. Woman claimed he'd harassed her by asking her out 3 times over 2 years at company. I reviewed evidence, found he'd asked once. She said maybe. He followed up twice over long period. Each time accepting her response professionally and moving on without any pressure. Helped him fight the accusation. Company investigated properly with my guidance. Found no harassment occurred. Woman was reprimanded for false complaint. He kept his job and reputation. That case felt like redemption, like I'd finally helped instead of hurt someone. My legacy now isn't the cases I won destroying innocent people. It's the cases I helped prevent. The men I helped defend, the lawyers I taught to be objective, the system I helped make more fair. That's everything I learned from being feminist lawyer who sued for emotional damages. Only to have judge award compensation to the man I'd accused instead of my client. That's the complete truth about what happens when feelings become evidence and accusations become convictions. That's my story 7 years later, still working to repair the damage I caused.